Okay, here we are for part two with Steve Rosen. Welcome again.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here, buddy, as always.
No problem. And congratulations with the part one. Seems a lot of people loved hearing your song and what Ed did with it. So that was really, really good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that was pretty exciting, to have all those people kind of get into it,
Yeah,
experience all over again. Edward playing on something I put together. It's pretty unbelievable for
yeah. I think your song is a
sure.
hit
Yeah,
now. You need to release that song.
yeah, exactly. Written by Steve Rosen and Eddie Van Halen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're going to go into part two now. I'm just going to play a little bit of the intro just to set everyone up, get the feel for the day. So here we are in September 1985, sitting in your room, and here's what Ed has to say.
But we got a lot of tunes.
Really?
Yeah. Can you play something for me? Is hooked up? Yeah. Yeah. Do like that. Hold on for a second. Yeah. Do like that.
All right, so Ed's over there talking about, hey, I've got a lot of tunes, and you can hear him. He's just about to jump on the keyboard and play something. Yeah, so you want to let us know a little bit more about what's happening coming up to this?
Exactly. So everybody needs to understand that this is the same night that Edward just happened to pop over. I'm working with my buddy Ron. We're just working on some of my music, stuff that Ron has written as well. He was my co-writer. And again, there's this knock at the door, and it's Edward Van Halen, and who knows? He was bored. So he just came over. And so part one, you heard Edward just sort of, hearing this little song that I'd written with Ron, and him putting these little guitar parts together. And I think he got just this amazing sense of how his brain worked as a songwriter and an arranger and an orchestrator. It was amazing. So we kind of got done with that. And we just came up to this little part that Adam played. So Edward says, yeah, we have a lot of songs. And what he's talking about is what is going to be the 5150 record, right? So I'm not sure when the 5150 record would come out. It's kind of many months after.
Yeah, was it March 1986? Is that right? I can't remember.
Right, sounds about right. So we're in September '85. So we're still 6 months away. So Edward, he's been, who knows how long he's actually been working on ideas. Yeah, he may have been working on ideas, an hour after the 1984 record was done. Knowing him, he probably had ideas stockpiled. It's actually interesting to think about what if a song like we're about to get into could have appeared on the 1984 record. And what would that have sounded like,
Exactly.
So you now have a different singer, interesting to postulate about that.
Yeah.
So Edward's saying, yeah, man, I have all these ideas. And then he sort of instructs Ron to maybe start playing some stuff.
Yep.
So let's proceed from there, Adam.
Okay, so this is where, so like you said, Ed asks if the keyboard's on, so he jumps on the keyboard just to show Ron something. And this is a little idea that Edward had.
Go ahead.
There we go. Little love walks in.
Oh man. Love walks in, and for anybody who didn't recognize it, you don't deserve to listen to the rest of this podcast. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, so he plays that, and so again, we're in September '85. No one knows what that is.
Yeah.
I truly believe that this is the first time he's ever played that song for anybody.
Mm.
Maybe he and Al have messed around with it. I'll bet you he hasn't even shown it to Michael yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously there are no lyrics, there are no words. So Sammy's in the band, and Edward's working on this song, and there's no doubt in my mind that he has written this song around this new singer, Sammy Hagar, right?
Yep.
So he's thinking about how Sammy is going to approach this song and what Sammy could bring to it. And yeah, man, you hear those little lines, and I mean that's the main motif of the song, right? I mean, it's just so freaking great,
Yeah.
I mean, and you can almost hear the kinds of guitar parts he's going to put over that.
Yep.
I mean, it just allows him to just go crazy, as a guitar player. I mean, it's so open and it's kind of melodic, and these big major chord changes, pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
But again, so I'm hearing this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and we're actually going to hear some of those guitar parts coming up real soon.
Exactly. So again, I'm hearing this, and it's just an idea. I don't know. Obviously, again, I don't know what this is. I don't know what the what the title is. I don't know what the melody or what the guitar parts are going to be. He tells me he has ideas. I'm assuming it's going to be for the next record, but I don't know. For all I know, it was him just messing around. Hey man, I've got a bunch of ideas. Yeah. So again, March comes around, and I hear the 5150 record, and I hear that song, and I go, oh my God. I remember the first time I heard it, I go, oh my God. That it's like, I don't know, man. It's like this reverse thing where, you're given like the secret, 8 months before, and then you hear it, you go, oh my God, that's it. That's what he was playing. That's what he was trying to get, to get my friend Ron to play and stuff. So, yeah, that was so amazing. I really believe that was an experience that no other writer ever had, and again, I write about that in the book, and I try to explain what that was like and that feeling. But here, you hear Edward talking about it, and you hear him playing those keyboard parts. Again, I think it just brings you so much deeper into that experience and everything that happened that night, right?
That's right, and it's great. I mean, we're getting the chance now to experience that with you, so this is really good.
Yeah.
All right, so the next part comes up here.
No, of course, I want you to go. Just a little sample.
All right, so this is where he's explaining to Ron what to do. So just saying that, keep those bass notes going while Ed's going to grab the guitar and do something else.
Exactly. So that's Ed playing those keyboard parts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right. So you have to understand, again, my friend Ron was a really talented musician. I mean, he was an incredible bass player. He's an amazing cello player. And again, there's that chapter in the book, Cello Goodbye, where Ron and I go up to 5150, and he gives Edward that, kind of a fragmented cello lesson. But Ron was also a really good keyboard player. Ron was also, he knew all about theory. Ron could play jazz. I mean, he's a really talented guy. So here, Edward is kind of, showing him on the fly these keyboard parts. And yeah, the chords themselves probably aren't too difficult, but for Ron to kind of absorb all that in the moment, remember what Edward is showing up. Remember, this is Edward Van Halen, breathing over your shoulder, saying, "Hey man, just play these chords." It's not like you're sitting in a room with some of your buddies and you're just messing around with some chord changes.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm sure inwardly Ron was pretty terrified of the whole thing, and trying to remember as closely as he could what Edward was showing him, and it's one of those situations where I think the harder Ron tried to absorb and remember what Edward was showing him, the more it just went out of his head. If Ron, Ron's trying to remember the voice things, I'm sure he's looking at, Edward and, how Edward was playing the chords,
Yep.
But I'm sure it was pretty nerve-wracking. I mean, I'm watching it, and it's like, I'm thinking, oh my God, Ron, are you getting all this, man? It's like, Ron, don't embarrass me, and Edward just, he had these expectations, he just thought that, hey, we're going to walk in, I'm going to walk in, and, he's kind of seen Ron play a little bit, and hey, Ron's going to be able to play these changes, which in a way was kind of a compliment to him, to Ron, because if Edward didn't think he could have done it, he wouldn't have, tried to explain it to him, say, hey man, try this and try this, you know what I mean? So, it was Edward's way of saying, hey man, I think you're a good keyboard player, now play this. Right?
Yeah. So I must say, on this part here, there was probably about another, I'd say 10 minutes of, you can hear, Ron's going through the keyboard parts and, Ed showing little things.
This might be hokey, but to an A. Do the left hand. C, E, A, F, G. One, two, three, four. C, E.
So I think now is when Ed starts playing the guitar.
A ballad thing. It sounds so fucking neat. He sings his ass off. Just try and hit the chords just straight. Yeah.
Just a little ballad thing. So you can hear him say to Ron, just try and get the chords straight.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's trying to make it a little easier for Ron.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
C right there, I was playing an E.
That's very do straight, don't do the pom pom.
wonder if this part here, it sounds like Ed's just making this melody up on the spot now as you guys are playing it. Like he's had the keyboard part now, because you can hear a couple of wrong notes in there. So it's not like he doesn't master it. So it really sounds like he is writing it as going.
Could be. Yeah. We hear him hit that one bad note in there. Yeah. I mean, it could very well be Adam. Yeah, man. He had some idea, but he knew it was going to be some kind of a real melodic line there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Maybe he didn't know. And when you hear Ron playing those chords, I mean, they're kind of simple chords, but it's such a great chord progression.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can just hear all kinds of things going over it. I mean, again, it just shows Edward's, his talent as a songwriter. I mean, so freaking great. For him to hear the keyboard parts, and he's hearing, ultimately the guitar parts. He's hearing what Mike is going to be playing, right? And what the keyboard bass is going to be playing.
Yeah,
man,
it's amazing.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
and it's also what's cool, man, is again, he's playing my Strat. I know that he didn't come over with one of his guitars, so he's playing that '66 Strat of mine, and my God, it just sounds unbelievable, right? I mean, from the very first note he hit, you go, "Oh my God, that's Edward Van Halen."
Yeah, right.
And then the way he kind of, mutes a couple of those notes. He mutes notes, like nobody else ever did.
For sure.
God, he was just a master, man. Yeah. Wow.
And for those playing along at home, I did notice that the recording, maybe because of the years of digital, tape to digital, the pitch is not quite on 440. So it's a little bit out, but just so everyone knows if they're trying to play along.
Right, that's very interesting. And now the other reason that could be is that this, right, and it's also being recorded to analog.
Yeah.
Right. So I recorded it. I have my little cassette player going. So who knows how off that was? I mean, even though by '85 I had gotten a Sony Pro Walkman. But still, I think you could actually change the speed. I think I always tried to keep it in the middle, which I'm assuming was, would have been, normal tape, the tape speed. But I mean, who knows, man? I may have nudged it, I may have missed it. Yeah. So anybody trying to play along, they're probably gonna have a problem. Plus, my guitar, I always. Even though my guitar was never in tune, I would never try to tune, down like Edward did a half step. So, I would have tried to tune to, A440. So anybody playing along, you're right, man. If it's a little tweaky off there, those are the reasons why.
That's right.
I gotta dig it because it's just so neat to be able to do different things with Sammy. I didn't sing this shit out of anything, man.
There you go. Talk about Sammy.
Yeah.
So the next one goes into, I think it's the next part of the song.
Heavy fucking.
So I think this is Ed back on the keyboards again.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you mind? No.
I love it. Do you mind? It's like, do you mind me writing a song with you guys?
Oh man, he was unbelievable. Yeah, like he was like, taking up too much of the space, too much of the air in the room. Do you mind? But who else would say that?
Yeah.
I mean, what other? I don't think Jimmy Page would say that. Or
No way.
I don't think Jeff Beck would say it. He's just, I mean, that says so much about him. And I think I probably write about that in the book, right? I mean, he's in the biggest band in the world, and he comes over and do you mind? Do you mind if I play your keyboard? I mean, man, he was amazing. So he probably. Because at that point I've given up the guitar. I mean, there's no way I'm about to pick up a guitar. Even though there was another guitar there, I mean, conceivably we could have had two guitars. That would have been a disaster. I mean, I would not even have attempted to play along with him and Ron. So he's probably still got the guitar around his neck, and he's probably leaning over Ron to, play those parts. But again, what's amazing is how much of the song he has fleshed out, right? I mean, he hears the parts, he's got those other little melody bits in there, and this other little kind of a little more staccato part. Just amazing.
Now this next part, he goes into something, but then it's really hard to hear. But for me, when I first heard it, it's like you can really hear Ed trying to think of what's coming next. You can hear little parts. I'll play it to you so you can hear what I mean.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick up. I mean, when you've got the headphones on, it's like he's trying to get that rhythm, little things going on. And so this is what he came up with.
So the drums would do the downbeat.
So there you go, talking about the drums, doing the thing there. Now the next part is just really cool. He talks about the bass parts. The way he does the bass, I love it.
Like the bass would just go 1, 2, 3, 4.
So just incredible the way he comes up with those different parts, and then goes to put them together with the bass and the other part. Amazing.
Exactly. I mean, that's wow, that's unbelievable. I mean, honestly, I'd forgotten some of this, to be honest with you. So again, him hearing everything, and I said, the drums are playing, dun, 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 it's straight. So the drums aren't hitting those accents, and then that bass kind of fills in those holes where the keyboard, kind of opens up, and so you can just see him in the studio, making these suggestions. I mean, who knows how he would actually, if he sat there and said, "Hey, Al, I'm hearing just straight, dun, dun," if he kind of, show that to Al, or if Al would just interpret that, and with Mike, "Hey, Mike, I'm kind of hearing this thing," and kind of show him those notes. I think he was pretty exacting about it. I think what he's hearing here would certainly be refined over the months by the time they go to the record. I mean, he knows exactly what it is. I don't think he allowed anything to be kind of happenstance or unintentional. I think he heard every drum beat. I think if Al did something and it was right, I think he'd say, no, I'm hearing this.
Yeah.
You know, Mike, no, Mike, you know, it's whatever that was. And maybe Ted refined some of that stuff. I don't know, because I used to ask Edward, well, what is it that Ted does? And I don't, and again, I don't know. I've never spoken to Ted, but I don't think Ted ever got into like parts, like, oh, no, the bass should go ba-da-dun-dun-dun instead of ba-dun-dun-dun, you know? But I think with Ted, it was more arrangements, you know, verse, pre-chorus kinds of things. You know, but I think more the musical elements. I mean, I think that, you know, Edward had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know, and if he was hearing something, you know, I mean, it was like, hey, this is what I'm hearing, and this is what I'd like to, you know. And, you know, I think of some other artists who do that, and Pete Townsend comes to mind. And I know that Ed was a huge Who fan and loved Pete Townsend. And again, I write a little bit in the book where they were corresponding a little bit. And at one point in time, they were going to do something together, which I think could have been just amazing. It's unfortunate it never happened. But I remember asking Pete about the Who's Next record, which is my favorite record. Yeah. And, you know, ask him about the songs, and maybe it was Won't Get Fooled Again, or one of the parts, you know, start with all this, that synth stuff, you know. And he said the demos that he showed the band were pretty complete, you know, because he was the singer, you know, so there was bass parts, there was keyboards. I'm sure, you know, he was an amazing drum machine programmer, right? So I think those songs in a demo fashion is pretty much what you heard, you know, on the records. I think the same was true with Edward. I think at the end of the day, I think, again, maybe he was showing them the band demos, or maybe he, you know, was explaining to them what he heard. But I think what he heard in his head is really, really close to what finally came out on record.
Yeah. That's right.
You know, I mean, certainly, you know, lyrics and melodies were Sammy's, you know, and certainly Al would interpret that, and Michael would interpret. Yeah, I'd say for the most part, you know, the blueprint was kind of already done, you know.
Yeah, and that definitely comes across these tapes as well. Like you're saying, you can hear Ed saying, you know, the bass is, this is the idea, drums, this type of idea, and yeah. So from here, it goes into another section, which we'll get into in part 3, where it's another idea of Ed's, and I must say there's some great playing. You can hear he goes back to the guitar. There's some more ideas on there. So it's really good to hear. I mean, it's probably lucky in a way that you guys were, you had Ron there and you had the keyboard, so were able to do this. So that was great.
Yeah, you know, and I think a lot about that. You know, I mean, in a bigger picture, you know, you look at life and you say, oh, it's destiny. You know, it's destiny that I was going to be at the whiskey that night. Yeah. Destiny that Edward was going to come over that night when I was working with my buddy Ron. Yeah, you know, is it destiny? You know, but I think about that. You know, what if, you know, Edward had come over and, you know, Ron hadn't come over that night. So all of this, you know, this never happens, you know? And to me, this is like, God, just such a deep look into who he was as a musician, you know, and how he thought, and him around a keyboard, and very lucky. Very lucky that he came over that night, that Ron and I were working. And because I think, what if he had come over and he still had this idea in his head, and you know, he you know, maybe played some of the guitar parts, you know, and he would have expected me to maybe pick up the other guitar, you know, maybe play some, you know, I mean, he probably got so frustrated, he probably would have tossed the guitar out the window. But yeah, you know, you just think about how, you know, how do those pieces sometimes fit together? You know, why was I there that night with my buddy? Because I think he'd only come over really about once a week. Ron worked at a music store called Nadine's, and you know, he'd come over once a week, and we try to work on stuff. And you know. So yeah, it was pretty fortuitous that he showed up that night, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, he could have knocked on the door, and I could have said, "I'm sorry, Ed. I'm working on a song for my buddy. I can't be bothered now," you know.
That's right.
Right? I mean, I'm kidding, of course. But it was a magic night, man. It was one of the best times I ever had with him.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
Now, would you say, because Ron was there with the keyboard, would this be the first time that you've sat down with Edward with a keyboard during your interviews?
That's an excellent question. It was.
Okay.
It was. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. In fact, I think that's the only time he ever was playing a keyboard. You know, we jammed a couple times. Yeah, he would always play bass.
Yeah.
I play guitar. But yeah, no, he never. He never sat down at a keyboard. You know, and I would just play guitar. Interesting, actually, because I mean, he always had keyboards. You know, obviously he had keyboards all over the place at 5150.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never have a keyboard at the house. But no, that was the only time.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So basically that's the sort of like the making of Love Walks In, and then in part 3 we're going to cover more of Ed's guitar playing, and I must say there's some great little techniques he explains to you in the next part. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, no, it's and I kind of know what's coming. So Edward was probably, you know, he probably was there at the pad for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and again, early on, you know, I thought he was going to be bored. It's like, you know, it's like, you know, a painter on his night off goes and hangs out with a bunch of other painters, and he wants to. It's like, Ed, you don't do this enough, you know? And that's what he says sarcastically, you know. Yeah, man, I hate music. And I love when he said that because he would. I don't think there's any other place on earth that he rather would have been. I think for him, you know, being able to show Ron the song and, you know, me hear the song, I think that meant something to him, or he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
You know, he just would have, you know, just sort of sat there or made a couple comments, or he never would have picked up the guitar. So, yeah, he was amazing, you know. And again, all that goes to, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, to spend this amount of time, like you were saying, he was there for quite a while, as we hear on the tapes. And, you know, this time of his life, he's like the world's most famous guitarist, you know, coming out of 1984, having all those hits. Yeah. And here he is, sitting in your little hotel or your house, you know. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 1985, right? They just put out, you know, this monster record. And I've always said about 1984, the record, you know, Van Halen was a very, very good band before this. And when 1984 came out, they became an important band. Yeah. And that's a big distinction, man. There's a lot of great bands. Not necessarily important bands. Van Halen became an important band with the release of 1980. Yeah. So yeah, man, he's, you know, I mean, who thinks, you know, I mean, he could have called anybody and gone to hang out, or could have stayed up at 5150, but he just loved the idea, man, of just hanging out. And I'd like to think that, again, it was our friendship, that relationship we had. So 85, so it's about 8 years that we've known each other, and you know, he comes over and, you know, feels comfortable and secure. Well, not that he would feel insecure playing in front of me, but secure enough that, you know, he could play these parts. And I now had all these ideas on tape, and yeah, I'm gonna go and cut a song and, you know, call it something with you know, his changes. You know, I mean. You know, obviously he didn't think I was going to do that, but you know, which goes back to the famous story of when he was there with Angel, and he went over, and I write about this. Angel was a band, and the Angel were pretty big, you know, in Edward's eyes. That's when he goes over and plays them the whole first record, you know, and then they try to rush release, You Really Got Me. And Ted Templeman screams at him, "This you fucking idiot, what did you do?" Because I played the record. He goes, "You what?" You know? So Edward just, you know, in his trusting nature, I mean, those guys, I mean, not that they stole one of his songs, but they stole that idea, right? But yeah, that was an amazing night. You know, people say, well, you know, all the time you spent with Edward, what was like your favorite moment? Well, this ranks as, you know, one of the top 5.
Yeah.
Edward Van Halen coming over to the house unannounced. That was the great part. It's not like I was expecting him.
Yeah.
And then sits down, he plays on some of my songs. He, you know, plays this song that no one has ever heard.
And I think
pretty amazing.
This really shows your friendship as well with Edward. I mean, I know you were a journalist as well, you know, did all the interviews with him, but, you know, I couldn't picture Edward going to these other journalists' house, just popping up, "Hey, come in, have a jam," you know. So it just really shows the connection you guys had.
Exactly, you know, and so that night it wasn't Steve Rosen, journalist, right? It was Steve Rosen, buddy, Steve Rosen, bad guitar player friend. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was just, you know, nowhere in his mind was it, oh, Steve's going to record this and I got to watch what you know, or it was none of that. So what you're hearing here, what you heard in part 1 and what you're going to hear in part 3 are not in the audiobook, but there is so much, well, everything that you've read in the hardback is there in the audiobook. And again, if you dug the hardback, the audiobook just for me, it just goes a level deeper because you're hearing his voice. And, you know, you're hearing all these parts, you know, his noodling, where I'm just trying to describe them in words. I mean, you're hearing these parts. And yeah, you know, in the book, I'm describing this night that we're talking about here. But here you can hear Edward, you know, and in the audiobook, you can hear those conversations. Yeah, if you don't have the audiobook, honestly, I just think you're missing a big piece of the Edward Van Halen legacy. And I'm not trying to sell anybody an audiobook, but I just think it's a real historic document, and I think you guys would love it. So check it out.
That's it. All right, we'll leave it there for this part. I'll say goodbye offline. But thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you in part 3.
See you, everybody.